Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the second video in my relationship series. Today we're going to be answering questions that you guys asked me on Instagram having to do with all things relationships, breakups, crushes, love, life, death, hurt, pain, trial, everything, okay? So we're just going to go ahead and get started. There's no time to yap around here. Let's get to what you all came here for. Okay, so the first question I have is, after realizing a guy isn't for you, do you cut them off completely or stay friends? This is such many opinions on this. Let me give you mine. I think that if you guys broke up and it was a mutual breakup, meaning that you both realized that you were better off not being in a romantic relationship, then it's totally fine to be friends. I think the danger comes in is when it's a one-sided breakup and then you try to hang out as friends and one person still has feelings involved and then it's just hurtful for them. All right, let me give you guys a really quick example of this. So I did go through like a one-sided breakup, and it was one-sided in the fact that I still had feelings for this guy and didn't want to break up. And so we had a mutual friend come into town maybe like 2 months after we had broken up, and he was like, hey, would you guys be down to like all hang out together, because we used to be like a really close friend group. And mind you, Jojo was in so much denial. I was like, this boy is going to realize what he lost and want me back. So I was just like, sure, like let me just be hot and he'll be like, I want you back. Not a good plan. Anyways, so we hung out as a group and it was extremely painful because I still had feelings for this guy. I was in denial, but I could still feel that it was really hurtful to hang out with him. Not because of necessarily he was being mean or anything, but just because my heart, like, it's just strange because you've built so much with that person and you have so much chemistry, inside jokes, like everything is still there, but then to pull back and only see them as a friend when you saw them as like your person, like your other half, it's really painful. So I really don't recommend it. I think that that is something that can be explored maybe after those really high emotions have settled down after the relationship is over. But for me, that has never been something that I've been able to do just because it was too painful, and in my case it was one-sided, and so I still had feelings for him and I still very much wanted to be with him where it wasn't reciprocated. So that made it really painful, just to kind of see that he had like pulled back to see me as just a friend. So not for me, but it's up to you. You really have to examine your heart and figure out what you are able to handle, because I would say if it's a mutual breakup, it's totally fine. If it's not, then I would say no, but that's just my opinion. You do you, girlfriend. What steps should I take towards healing? Oh man, this is a really great question. It's the question of the century. My whole last video I did, actually, I touched on basically step by step on how I worked through all the emotions that came up with my breakup. So I would say check that video, but overall, if I could like sum that whole video up, it is learning how to sit and I'm so sorry, I'm just so popular. It's literally learning how to sit in your pain, and sitting in your pain sounds exactly what it is. It's the worst. You just sit and you cry and you're like, this sucks, I feel awful, I blah blah blah, and you just process all those emotions, feel them, get them out of your system, and then move on. So it can look like a lot of different things as well, but I would say that would be my first step, is just to learn to process your pain. And a big part of that actually comes from you being self-aware about what's actually going on inside of your heart, because you can feel when you're in pain. A lot of us, we're really good at stuffing it or ignoring it or jumping to a new girlfriend, a new boyfriend, a new obsession, a new hobby, a new job. All these things, we're really good at drowning those feelings, but you can feel it if you actually just sit down with yourself and be like, what am I feeling? So that would be my number one thing, is to just actually work through the pain and be intentional about it. Like, intentional healing is so important. When do you know you're healthy and able to consider a new relationship? This also very much has to do with you as an individual, so I can't give you like a timeline or a certain sign, but I will say one thing is, if you can genuinely think about your ex and wish them the best and have no like anger, bitterness, or resentment towards them, that's a huge step that you're actually healed and in a good place. And for me, like, that takes different time amounts for everybody. For me, it took me probably 2 years before I could even like wish that my ex was living a great life, because I was so angry at him. And it took me probably 2.5 years before I actually started going out on dates again. So I just recently started going out again, and so it takes a long time, especially if you really cared about that person and if there was a lot of just like trauma and hurt that came from that relationship. So I would say if you're able to think about them and wish them the best, Also, I would say you should sit down with people in your life that know you really well and genuinely ask them to be honest with you about how you're doing, because we don't really realize it sometimes, but looking back, I can see when I was still working through a lot of the pain and the hurt, I would constantly bring up conversations about my ex because I just felt the need to like talk about it and just like vent, but it was a very unhealthy venting because I was venting trying to get someone to kind of see my side and like all this stuff. So it's very important that you have people around you that are able to speak into your life and let you know where you're at, because a lot of the times people outside of us can see better than we can see ourselves sometimes, if that makes sense. So I'd say ask the people in your life, be like, hey, like, be honest with me, where do you think I'm at, all that stuff. And then number 3, I would say to sit down and actually ask yourself, like, why do I want a relationship? A lot of times people don't realize that they actually just want a relationship to just fill a void so they don't feel lonely, or to have someone to cuddle with, or all of these things, and they're not actually looking at it in the right lens of like, a relationship is something that I want to lead towards a marriage. So if you're just dating around to have a good time or to have a cuddle buddy or all those things, those are not great signs. You probably don't want to be getting involved with other people, because if you're being honest, at the end of the day, you're probably going to hurt them and you're going to hurt yourself as well. So those would be my tips. What felt like the hardest thing to forgive? I'm guessing you're asking about my experience with that. I just want to preface this by saying, like, my heart is never to drag anyone in the dirt, and that's not what I'm wanting to do, but I do really believe in being honest and telling you guys kind of my experience. So the hardest thing for me to forgive from my past relationship would definitely have been the way that it ended. I know my ex didn't mean it to feel like this, but to me, I felt like I had been dumped, and I have a good amount of self-confidence and I know my worth, and to me, I was like, I am not the type of girl that you just dump and kind of just like throw and walk away, and that's what it felt like. Obviously, I know that wasn't his heart, but that was the hardest thing. I would say also, in addition to that, probably, it really hurt me that he hadn't come to me and talked with me about how he was feeling earlier, because it felt like he kind of just went off and like figured it all out in his brain and like rationalized it, and then came back to me and was like, it's done, it's over. And there was no room for like talking about it or even trying to get help in our relationship, all that stuff. I was frustrated with that for sure. So that was probably the hardest thing to forgive, was that I kind of assumed that in a relationship, it's two people's hearts that are invested in and in it, so it should be both people coming together and talking about the issues, not just one person. So that was probably the hardest thing to forgive, but girlfriend, I did it. I'm living my best life. How do you know he wasn't the one? You guys are asking very personal questions regarding my relationship. I thought it would be kind of just like broad questions, but I'll be super honest with you. I'm probably not the best person to answer this question because I actually did think he was the one. He very much felt like my other half, and like everyone was like, when you know, and it just works, and that's how it felt. So I can't answer that question, but I will say, if this is something that you're trying to figure out in your own life, probably you'd want to look at the big core values in your life and see if that person lines up with them. So just the broad picture would be like political views, religious views, how they treat other people, like what their goals are in life, all those things. But I would say even on a deeper level, you would probably want to sit down and figure out what you value, and then make sure that the person that you're with values those same things. So for me, like integrity, honor, and respect are like 3 of like the core pillars of who I am. Like those are things I believe that we need to treat everyone with those, and those are like just really important things to me. So when I'm looking for someone, I'm also looking that they have those same core values and those things that are going to work. And then also with like religion, this is another thing. I know a lot of people who follow me are Christians, is it can be really hard because you could both be Christians. Like he could say, yeah, I'm a Christian, or I could say, yeah, I'm a Christian. But there are different standards of being a Christian, and it's kind of sad that that is what the world is right now, but there is. So for me, I could like a guy who's a Christian, but it still wouldn't work because his standards wouldn't be where I was. And I've had experience with that before in the past, where I'm like, oh, he says he's a Christian, but the way that he treats this person or the way that he views this didn't line up with what I believed. So a lot of it is just finding someone who believes those same things as you, and that can be really challenging. So that's what I would say to judge someone, is if they're the one. And then I'm just gonna give you the advice that everyone tells me that doesn't make sense to me, but they always say it. You know, you'll know when you know, okay? So I hope that helps somebody. The last question I have is how to not see all men the same after trauma or a breakup. Oof, that is a heavy one. I would say a lot of that is going to come back to you, and it's not our fault. When bad things happen to us, a lot of the times it's not our fault, but healing is totally up to us and it is our responsibility. So I would say if you're still having a really hard time with just not trusting men in general, there might be some areas in your heart that you haven't actually like invited the Lord into and healed those areas. I would say also it's really not fair. It's not fair to other people when if we don't take our own healing and take responsibility for it. It just is not fair for the rest of the people that try to get close to us, because if I hadn't done any work on healing and getting to a better place, like every single guy that asked me out, I would be like, absolutely not, like you're just gonna dump me, you're just gonna leave me, like all that stuff. But because I've done the work to actually be like, a lot of it I think is just asking the Lord to heal your heart and asking him to just like reveal areas that you're believing. It's probably a lie you're believing about men, honestly. So I would just sit down with the Lord and just ask him to maybe like reveal those areas in your heart that you are believing a lie, because that can really easily turn into something a lot bigger. And then, but also in addition as well, I would say that trust is something that like needs to be earned. Like you, especially if you've been really hurt by guys in the past, it's totally okay to be like, hey, like I'm gonna need you to show me that you're trustworthy, because we're really not meant to just give out our trust to anybody. So you could even just communicate with that with someone. If a guy's interested in you, be like, hey, like this is where I'm at, this is what's happened in the past, I feel like I've had my trust broken and trust is really important to me. And so you can just talk with him about that and be like, hey, like trust is important, I'm gonna need you to show me that you're trustworthy. And that's totally fine, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I hope that is helpful. Hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. Also, you can also shoot me a DM on Instagram or comment down below any other relationship questions you have. I'm thinking the next videos I'm going to do are green flags and red flags in relationships, which I am so excited for. So hope you stick around. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you guys all later. Bye.